There's some really tough feelings that are associated with stigma, um, particularly disgrace, reputation, integrity, and, you know, shame, the big burden of shame. Um, but for myself, I was like a lot of teenagers, I guess, at the time, is I just had a real need to feel a sense of connection and belonging. And so I joined in, and, as my drinking and drug use increased, the very first bit of stigma that I experienced was actually in that peer group, because, my behavior started to increase, let's just say, and worsen. And, and it started to be noticeable. Some of the things that I was doing while I was under the influence were not what I would have done, certainly, if I'd been clean and sober at the time. And, that behavior started to separate me away from the pack a little bit. Um, and it was actually somebody that I was drinking with on a regular basis that first called not alcoholic, but alky. And I remember just the feeling associated with that word, and just feeling like, oh, so I'm not exactly like you. I'm a little bit different. I started to feel in a really meaningful way that I was having trouble, and I was having trouble that even some of the people that I was partying with weren't having trouble. And I started to feel, that separation from the pack, that losing that sense of belonging, that sense of connection with those people. And, when I eventually reached out for help, that's when I experienced a whole nother round of stigma, you know, because I had to out myself as a person that had a problem. And that strong sense of just wanting to be like everybody else, having to out myself created that sense of separation, and in particular, was many months into recovery that I decided to go to treatment. I didn't decide. Um, you know, when I had to out myself to my workplace and admit, that I had this problem, um, there was like you talked about, those feelings of like, well, what will this do to my reputation at work as a professional? And I was thinking the other day, like, how ironic that is, because, in the depths of my addiction, my public behavior was really less than acceptable in so many ways. And yet when it came to addressing that with my workplace, all of a sudden it was a big secret, whereas I'd been so public with my behavior, but anyway, and then even the stigma in being in recovery rooms, and like not wanting to be like everybody else, to have that same problem as everybody else, and trying to distance myself from that group, and I had more stigma, but eventually I started to see the similarities and how I did belong, and how that was good for me, and then I guess this last bit of stigma that I've experienced is the stigma of being in recovery, and just when I'm in a group of people where there's maybe they have an undiagnosed themselves, I find that I've over the years I've heard a lot of people explain to me about their drinking, and rationalizing and justifying what they're doing in that moment and how many drinks they had. And, and it's funny, like I represent something that they don't, I guess, really want to look at. And, so there's some stigma there. I'm always feeling that, if everybody in the room is drinking except for me, I feel, kind of a reverse stigma in that way. But, I'm lucky for myself that, I journeyed through my recovery, and, luckily the program I was involved in helped me not only to address the problems within myself, but to reconnect with the community as a whole. And, and in that whole process, I learned to like myself a whole lot more and understand myself in a really important way. And, because of that like of myself, that increased my confidence, and also my understanding increased my confidence. And so I haven't shied away from um, what has happened to me over the years and the things that I did to try to cope with how I felt. I had, low self-esteem and depression and anxiety and all those things. And I used drugs and alcohol and sex and, what have you to try and, cope with those feelings and run away from them in so many ways. It's over the years, I just find that, I don't regret my past now. There's nothing about it that I'm ashamed of, but it is my story. And I prefer to tell it, when and how I feel that it's appropriate. I mean, I don't like it to be broadcast, as the first thing you want to know about me, or some of those stories that I told were appropriate.